Welcome back. We're talking about destination for Travel 101. You could probably tell because of the title of the video, and if I put a really fun AI generated thumbnail, then maybe you can tell by that too. So we're talking about destination, and more specifically, how to find a fitting destination for the wheelchair and for what you would enjoy. A lot of times on social media, you're going to see that people post videos of traveling and they say 10 things you must do in whatever city they're in. And I think that's the worst, most annoying thing I've ever seen. It can be a kind of good way to find interesting things to do in whatever city. However, it skips over your interest. And it just gives you a sense of FOMO, feeling of missing out. And then it makes you feel like your vacation is inadequate unless you did all these major touristy hotspots, or you tried this type of food, which is really special for this thing, and all of this stuff. And I think because of this, watching videos of travel for specifically what to do is a really bad idea, and I don't recommend it. Instead, what you should do is think about, what do you actually enjoy? What fulfills you when you travel? Some people, they travel by adventure and exploration. Some people travel by relaxation, recovery. When it comes to travel, the first thing that I typically consider is why. Am I going to visit friends? Am I going because there's really good food that's fresh, local, or maybe really affordable, or just the general cuisine is really, really good? Or am I going for the sights? Is there some beautiful scenery, whether it's out in nature that is mostly accessible or accessible enough for me? Or am I going for the sights of the city itself or something of that nature, but something to see? Or am I going for the city because it's a popular city and just to be there and feel the energy of all the people? Or is it the people themselves? Am I there to learn about the world and experience other cultures and meet new people? Or is it the history? If I go to a place of historical interest to me, is something significant here that happened, whether it's with my own family and my lineage, or just some like World War II or something like that, who knows? Or art. It could be for art. It could be for music. Like if you want to go to Berlin for the German house music scene and dancing and having fun, that's also something as well. Think about that first. Think about what really interests you for traveling. Okay. And now I'm going to talk about very quickly all of the other things, and then I'll dive into them more. Car or public transit? The terrain? City or nature? Weather? Those right there are the things that are the most important for people in wheelchairs when traveling. Because when you think about car or public transit, when you go somewhere, do you have to drive? In America, in the United States of America, just about everywhere, except for New York City and a couple other places. But most places in the United States of America, you have to drive. So you have to get a rental car. And if you're traveling alone, that means you have to bring your own hand controls, which also means pack and carry them. Or if you're traveling with somebody, then they would drive. And when you're doing a rental car, the younger you are, the harder it is, or the more expensive it is to rent a car. And public transit has its own flaws in a way. It might not be very accessible. or reliable, which is also another way of saying inaccessible, but more for everybody. Or it just might not be safe, or it might not get you to where you want to go. That's the other difficult thing, is that when you're doing the public transit, you have to mostly be resigned to staying within the city. If you want to go out to some weird spots, more so in nature, it's hard to get public transit out there or find it that gets you there. So that's covering public transit. Think about that. Most of the time, public transit's the way to go, especially for people in wheelchairs, because even though you can get hand controls from some or most car rental places, it can still be difficult. You still might have issues. And to me, I don't like driving. Maybe if you love driving and you want to do a road trip across some country, South America, North America, Europe, Asia, or kind of like Middle Eastern area, Eastern Europe, then you would rent a car because you're doing a road trip. But otherwise, I prefer to do public transit. Next thing, terrain. The terrain matters so much. So much. Even in the United States of America, when I travel, I've been to Seattle. I haven't been to San Francisco, but I've heard some stories about how steep and how many hills there are. Almost the whole city is on the hill. So when you're going around, it's much more difficult to explore and get around in general because of all the hills. Not only going up, but going down can be difficult. If it's super, super steep, you might have to go down backwards, and that can be difficult. You might burn your hands holding the wheels, trying to slow yourself down. One time in Seattle, I had to go to a gas station to get working gloves so that I would not burn my hands because the hill was so steep. My hands were burning. So I got part of the way down, and I was with my mom. She was holding the wheelchair while I had the gloves burning through. It was that difficult of a steep hill. It was worth it because there was a really cool trail down there that led to another part of the city. But still, something to consider for countries such as Portugal. That's another one I'm familiar with for being a lot of hills. At least I believe most of it, of the country of Portugal, is a very hilly terrain. So if you want flat terrain, think about that. And I think you do. I think you would want flat terrain. Next thing, city or outdoor. Because of the wheelchair, city is usually better because it's more paved in general and it's more accessible friendly in general. If you were to go outdoors, it can be pretty tough. Or if you were to go somewhere that's not quite city, where it's maybe more sparse or more countryside, something like that, where it's not necessarily the great outdoors, where you're on the mountain and you're hiking every day and stuff like that, but it's also not quite city. So if it's in between outdoors and city, even that can be difficult because really, it's the sidewalks. When you're in a wheelchair, and I keep doing this because my wheelchair is right here. When you're in a wheelchair, sidewalks, you're pretty limited to sidewalks. If there are roads, a lot of times, if the sidewalk doesn't suffice, I'll just go in the road. And depending on the type of road, of course, if it's more of a highway, faster road, then I don't do it. But if it's more of the back streets and everything, and there's cars parked on either side of the road, things are pretty calm, people don't go too fast, then I will go in the street and I'll just make my way around because sidewalks can be, there's a great variety of sidewalks around the world. Some of them are very narrow. And I've heard stories about Bangkok in Thailand where people don't even bring their strollers, their prams for their kids, for the babies. You know the stroller they push them in? They don't even bring that outside because of how difficult it is just to push that. So if a parent is having a difficult time pushing around a pram, you can imagine how hard it would be for a wheelchair. Again, I'm pointing to the wheelchair that might not be in frame. So considering the city or the outdoors, just the sidewalks alone, the street, even if you might need to use the street, is it a paved street or is it mostly this cobblestone-y or gravel road? Because even that would be pretty difficult. I think gravel is better than cobblestone. Both are not that great though. Next thing is weather. And actually weather is one of the more important ones. Weather is actually what I look at first. I consider the weather as the first filter that I do for where I would travel. So when you look at all possible places to go in the world, every flight that exists, then the first thing I do is think, where is it warm? Not too hot. I don't want it to be 35 Celsius or, over 100 Fahrenheit. But I don't want it to be under about 14 Celsius, about 55 degrees Fahrenheit. That's my range, personally. There are other things to consider. If you're in a wheelchair and if you don't sweat, some people don't sweat their legs and they can overheat. So you would definitely prefer a little bit colder. But again, risk of frostbite, risk of your legs getting too cold. So it's a balance between the weather. So if you go to London or England, then it rains quite a bit. And even though the temperature might be okay, same with Singapore, the temperature is okay, it's tropical, but the rain can be uncomfortable. It can make your grip on the wheelchair wheels less good, worse, and it's just not as enjoyable. Also, if you go somewhere during a rainy season, there might be floods. Cities flood, it's happened. It happens quite often. And if you get stuck in a flood, in a flooded city, I don't know what to do. You're stuck. That would be terrible. And of course, snow. And that's it, actually. Snow, rain, heat. After that, the weather is not so predictable, but just the general. Is it very rainy? Is it very sunny? Is it very warm? Very, very warm, very hot, very cold? And then you work with that. Because we'll get to this on episode 5, but packing. When you travel somewhere cold, you have to pack more. You have to pack thick pants, hoodies, sweaters, gloves, jackets, thick socks, boots. And all of that can make packing double the size. So that's another thing to consider when traveling. The weather is, I think, the first thing you should consider. How do you find out about this stuff? Well, I use artificial intelligence, also known as deep learning, which is the more specific term for Google Gemini, OpenAI, ChatGPT. DeepSeek, there's more, but you can pose the question to the large language model. It can search the internet, and maybe you can find out in general how good are the sidewalks, how good is the infrastructure, or how accessible is the nature. Here in the United States of America, we have the national parks. All of them have some amount of accessibility, not to a 100% complete accessible, you can do everything that everyone else can do. However, they make it very nice, very easy, and they help you out to do most things. So Grand Canyon, Zion National Park, those are the main two that I remember going to. Those national parks are really nice, they're very accessible. Again, you can't do everything, but they work very hard to make sure that you can do most things or the more important parts of the national park, the parts that are very amazing. And it is similar for Taiwan. I was just in Taiwan, and there's the national park north of Taipei, and I went there with my brother, there's 2 or 3 places that are made to be more accessible, and some other places are just completely not accessible. Some of them may be in the middle, but there were 2 places that my brother and I went that were quite accessible, very nice, and it was beautiful. It was amazing. So I found out about that through asking AI, because the ChatGPT or the Google Gemini, I use Google Gemini, it will search, you just tell it to search the government websites. The government websites, if they're good, will tell you about how accessible each of the national park trails are, or national park kind of sub-parks. Also, using forums such as Reddit or any other online community place where you can post a question and you'll get people to answer. This is what I did when I was in Singapore. I was thinking about doing a trip within the trip to go to somewhere in Thailand or Malaysia. And I asked some questions about the sidewalks. That's what I mentioned earlier. And I found out that I should probably not go alone, because I was going to go alone, but I thought better of it, because with the sidewalks being not so accessible and maybe the infrastructure isn't the best for wheelchairs, it would be better to be with friends who can help carry and lift up the wheelchair when I need some help. Last but not least, more of just a remark rather than actual advice, is that when traveling in wheelchairs, we are mostly limited to cities, and bigger cities, more popular cities, because what I've noticed is that when there is more money, the infrastructure becomes more accessible without even trying. If you think about when you go into a store, maybe a grocery store, such as Lidl or Edeka or M&S or Walmart or other ones, they have those doors, the big glass doors that just they slide open, and they have the sensor up top that senses movement to open up for anyone that's walking in. Those, I am quite sure, were not designed specifically for accessibility. However, they are way more accessible than having a handicap button to press and have the door open automatically. Because if you think about the variety of abilities for people in wheelchairs, some of them can't lift up their arm to press that button to open the door. So if you have a door that automatically opens when the person comes up to it, and there's no bumps or anything, that is very, very accessible. You find that type of building infrastructure, so how the doors are made, in cities with more money, more people, I guess, wealthier economy. Also, as a bonus, and then after this I'm done, I promise. As a bonus, I will tell you some of the more accessible cities that I have been to. I have been to a lot of places. Considering everything we talked about, including public transit, Singapore is really nice. Japan is really nice. Switzerland is really nice. Taiwan is really nice. Barcelona is really nice. London, mostly nice. New York City, almost mostly nice. Greece, Italy, it's pretty good. Maybe a little bit better or worse than New York City. Germany, mostly nice, depending on where you are. Toronto, mostly nice. Perth, Australia. Mostly nice, kind of limited, but I got around for about 6 months, and I got around to a lot of places, so good. It was good. The Netherlands, such as Amsterdam, Specifically Amsterdam. Good. Pretty good. Iceland. Not good. Pretty bad. Basically, your only option is a taxi. For most. I couldn't find any bus, any public transit from the airport. And usually the airport's where the best public transit is at. So Iceland, not very good. And also very cold all the time. Seattle, pretty good, but very hilly, so not good. That's just about everywhere that I've been. So if you're really thinking where to start on what cities to even look at, those are some cities you could consider. I haven't been in South America or Mexico, so I'm sure there are a lot of good places there. I just haven't been. Africa, I have not been. And Africa's a huge continent, by the way, not a country. But South Africa, North Africa, upper, lower, middle Africa, wherever you want. There are some very developed cities all over the continent of Africa. Sadly, I just haven't been. So there we go. Destinations. Thank you for watching. How to sit 101. Not on this couch. I did that on purpose. Here's the microphone. I have some good cologne on today. I always do. Hopefully you can smell that.